Hi, I'm Russ Barlow from Sim Innovations. We made a presentation at FlightSimCon 2016 last weekend, and I don't think anyone captured it for the web. So you can get the information. We'd like to just try to recreate that here in my office. It's obviously not the same without the crowd and a little adrenaline flowing from being in front of a crowd, but we'll hopefully present the same information for you, and I hope you enjoy it. Hi, I'm Russ from Sim Innovations, and I'm here today with Ralph and Corin, the founders of Sim Innovations. They're here from the Netherlands for the show today. Now, from my title, you can tell I have a thing about mice in the cockpit. Today, I'd like to explain what that's all about and how our product AirManager solved that for me, and lots of other cool things you can do with AirManager to enhance your simming experience. So let's get going. I started flying when I was 16, and by the time I started college, I had a commercial pilot's license with an instrument multi-engine rating. I studied aeronautical engineering at The Ohio State University, and I also worked as a flight instructor there. I graduated and was commissioned through ROTC into the United States Air Force. In the Air Force, I spent 7 years flying several aircraft, including these two, where I flew operational missions. I was excited to see the Phantom out there on the museum floor. After the Air Force, I spent over 30 years as an airline pilot for a major airline. Unfortunately, about 4 years ago, my airline career was cut short when I lost my medical certificate due to an eye disease. Suddenly, I had a lot of time on my hands. I needed a hobby, and since I still had a love for airplanes and aviation, I wondered if home flight simulators might be the answer. Unfortunately, my earlier experience with flight sims was not all that positive. I remember this ad from about 1982 for the brand new Microsoft Flight Sim 1.0. The picture did look kind of cool, and the headline looked even more promising. If your PC got any more realistic, you'd need a license. Wow. Unfortunately, this is an actual screenshot from that sim. As you can imagine, for a real pilot flying airliners, this really wasn't very impressive. But it had been over 30 years since then, so I decided it couldn't hurt to look into sims again and see what the technology was today. Boy, was I surprised. I found stunning visuals, as good or better than any airline sim I had flown. And the sound was also great. I found good flight models too, especially on the add-on airplanes. And I was blown away by systems modeling. Many of the sims could be airline training aids. Everything worked just like in the real airplane. The factors outside the airplane, air traffic control, weather, ground and air traffic, were all very realistic too. Especially impressive was what you could do with Pilot Edge and VATSIM to introduce that important element of air traffic control into the experience. I was a bit confused by the wide range of human interface devices in use. Everything from a mouse and keyboard to individual modules, all the way up to a full cockpit, almost indistinguishable from the real thing. Hardware did seem a bit expensive, but I think I had everything I needed. Overall, I was extremely impressed. I had a new hobby. I was soon hooked, like most of you, in the lifelong quest to make my sim as realistic as I can. But I realized we might disagree what is important in our sim to be realistic. Someone using a flight simulator purely for fun and gaming entertainment will probably have an entirely different set of priorities than someone using the sim for serious flight training. For example, the gamer will usually want the very best visuals and sound, but may be happy with only a plausible flight model. Complex systems may actually be perceived as
overcomplicated in a negative, and gamers may be very comfortable playing with a mouse like all of their other games. Those using the sim for flight training, on the other hand, may need only plausible scenery, except for around the airport, and prefer higher frame rate for a smoother, more responsive flying. These users need an accurate flight model and systems, and using the mouse is very undesirable. Obviously, with my years in the cockpit, I'm biased towards the flight training end. I have trouble thinking of the sim as a game. During my career, it was a place that I went twice a year for a check ride with my job on the line. And if I was really lucky, the FAA might show up too. And for training, the goal is not really realism, but really training transfer. By training transfer, we mean how well can learning a skill or task in the sim prepare you to do that same task in the airplane. You know, the FBI trains its agents to spot counterfeit money by knowing the real currency so well that when they look at a fake bill, it's obvious to them. This was my approach as I started out flying in sims. After all the years flying real airplanes, how well did that actual flying prepare me to fly the sim? I found one big shortcoming that stood out. It was evident the first time I tried to land a Cessna using the mouse as a yoke. It didn't turn out that well. I think I crashed. But then it dawned on me, if decades of flying did not prepare me to land using the mouse, why would anyone using the mouse think it might prepare them to fly the airplane? And even after I got some basic flight controls, it seemed unnatural to reach to grab the mouse whenever I needed to set a switch or turn a knob. Well, it seems that the FAA agrees when it comes to using a mouse or keyboard in the training environment for basic air training devices. The basic operation of the airplane and the systems must be without a mouse and a keyboard. I found myself in a real dilemma. I didn't think I could afford to build a complete cockpit like you see here. Well, maybe I should restate that. My wife didn't think I could afford a full cockpit build like this. But I still really felt the mouse was unrealistic and it detracted from my simming experience. After a pretty extensive search, I found what I think is a very good solution. A way to get rid of the mouse without the cost of a complete cockpit build. That answer is by using 2D touchscreen panels that are part of AirManager. Now, touchscreens have some real advantages as they solve my problem. First, touchscreens are visually accurate. They can be laid out in a realistic manner, very similar to the airplane, and the controls can be portrayed accurately with graphics. You know, with hardware solutions, you either have a generic cockpit that really doesn't look exactly like any airplane you're flying in the sim, or you end up with one very accurate airplane, but you're stuck flying that same configuration all the time. Another advantage is the intuitive interaction using a touchscreen. You know, if you're flying and you need to reach for a control, you have a natural head movement down into the cockpit panel from the outside to locate the control visually. Then you reach with your hand, just like in the airplane, you interact with it, and you view the feedback right next to the control as it should be, not looking back towards a virtual cockpit after finding a control on some other control module. And it's very flexible also. You don't need to take a saw and wire snips and a soldering iron to modify your panel. It can all be done through graphics. Best of all, you're not limited to a single aircraft, but you can fly a different aircraft and always have the same realism as the one before. And the cost of touchscreen monitors has gone way down. For $200 to $300, you can buy a nice 23-inch monitor to run a main panel and have many, many more instruments than you could buy for that amount if you were buying external hardware modules. Also, your old computer, which most simmers have laying around as they've upgraded, is usually strong enough to run AirManager, so you can leverage that old computer that's sitting in your closet. So I found the answer with touch control and AirManager to create 2D interactive panels that can interface with the sim. Now, in my opinion, and this is strictly my opinion, I feel like I get about 90% of the realism of a hardware cockpit, and certainly for less than 10% of what that hardware would cost to build a complete cockpit. So here's how it works. AirManager is a separate app to make interactive 2D instrument panels that can connect with the simulator. It's Java-based, so it can operate with most any operating system, including Mac, Windows, and Linux. It can run locally on the same machine as your simulator. But it really shines when it runs on a separate computer, allowing you to keep all that performance on your simulator so that you get the very best graphics. Now we have plugins for all three major simulator platforms, as you can see: Flight Simulator X, Prepared, and X-Plane. And the cool thing is that the computer that runs AirManager doesn't have to be the same operating system as the computer that's running your simulator. For example, if you had an old Macintosh, you could use it to run the panel while you're running Prepared or FSX on a Windows computer. Networking can be either wired via Ethernet or through a Wi-Fi network. And setup couldn't be easier. Just enter the IP address of the simulator into AirManager and connection's automatic. And AirManager also can support many multiple devices attached to your simulator, connected via Wi-Fi or Ethernet. For example, you might want to put some extra instruments on your laptop alongside your desktop computer running AirManager. Or we also have an iPad version, which many people like to use to run a radio stack or a PFD, or maybe an autopilot control if they don't have a touchscreen, so that commonly used control can be used without a mouse. We also have a Raspberry Pi version of the software that will be coming out soon and open a lot of possibilities. So your setup of AirManager can be anything as minimal as just placing an iPad in front of a desktop computer like you see here, all the way up to very complex commercial quality sims that are certified by local authorities in various countries. Another neat thing about AirManager is all users have access to our store. Our online store has over 400 instruments. Mostly are submitted by users, and they're all open source so that you can download them and use them to build panels of your liking. To download, you just click the Get button and it's downloaded to your computer and ready to be installed. Now, once you have the instruments, you can create custom panels. You can resize the instruments. You can arrange their layout any way you want. And once you have a panel, you can assign that panel to a sim aircraft, and every time that aircraft is opened in the simulator, AirManager will automatically switch panels so that you're ready to fly. And the connection is automatic. Once it's set up, the connection requires no attention on your part, and it's rock solid. We also offer a number of pre-made panels too with the package, and these are going to be increasing because our next version will allow our users to submit not only instruments, but complete panel layouts. AirManager also allows you to make your own instruments. It's really pretty simple. The first step is to produce the graphics. As you can see for the airspeed indicator that I just showed you, it has a background image and a transparent image with only a needle and a shadow for the airspeed indicator. The next step is to write a logic script to manipulate those graphics to allow it to interact with the sim. I'll just quickly walk you through the script for that instrument. As you can see, we add full screen the image of the background. The images are loaded in order from back to front. Then we add the image full screen of the airspeed needle, and we assign it the variable name AS needle. Now moving to the bottom, you can see the subscription to the data from the simulators. In this case, we're using both Flight Simulator X prepared and X-Plane. With a single instrument, we can operate both simulators, or all three simulators. You can see that we subscribe to the X-Plane data ref airspeed knots pilot, and FSX we subscribe to airspeed indicated knots. In both cases, the callback function is new speed, which is above in the middle of the script. It passes the value to the variable speed, and then the rest of the function just rotates that needle based on the speed that it's given to match it up with the markings on the face of the instrument. Now I'd like to show you some real-world applications of AirManager and some simulators. This is Mark Hurst of Almost Aviation's Aerosoft Twin Otter Extended, which he flies using FSX. Now, Mark has a video blog where he's documenting his build, and he has almost all the switches, and he used the virtual cockpit using TrackIR. You know, there are no 2D panels for Aerosoft's Twin Otter. So we built this panel which fully supports all of the LVARs, or local variables, that are common in add-on aircraft. That's something we added recently, and I wanted to get involved just to see how we could use that new part of our application, and this was a cockpit that we came up with. Mark's quite happy with it. Here's one of Mark's instruments, just to show you the close-up. All these instruments are made without 3D modeling, using freeware apps. We have extensive online tutorials and documentation and support forums to guide you along if you want to get involved in instrument building. And we certainly encourage that, because our user base is what really makes AirManager special, with all the cool things that people are making with our instrument making capabilities. This is Matt Thomas of Roger Dodger Aviation. He's flying a Robinson R22 and FSX. If you get a chance, check out his site. He builds very cool enclosures and frames for simming for entry-level to intermediate level simmers. Very innovative and inexpensive to make, and very cool, I think. As you can see, this just sits on a table and is made with PVC pipe. Most of his are made with PVC pipe. It has three 32-inch HDTVs. He bought an inexpensive $90 LCD screen, non-touch screen, that he's using for his instrumentation. Michael Brown of X-Force PC is flying X-Plane using the standard Beech Baron instruments that are one of our pre-made panels that he's arranged in a useful configuration on a widescreen monitor. And he has a wraparound projection visual in this sim. Now this is my sim in my basement. It's three TVs and 50-inch TVs, and using a touchscreen monitor. Here I'm flying the Eclipse very light jet using X-Plane, able to fly the complete flight from taxi out to taxi in and shutdown without touching the mouse. This provided some somewhat complex problems with this build. Have you ever tried to get three 50-inch TVs into your basement without your wife noticing? Here's an example of an overlay over an LCD screen, one of our users who's building a Boeing 727 in X-Plane. And here's a very nice Jet Ranger helicopter that's one of our users is putting together. You'll have to admit, unbelievably realistic looking, using LCD screens under the overlay. So what does the future look like for AirManager? Well, in the fall, we hope to release our OpenGL version of AirManager, which will replace the Java-based rendering engine with an OpenGL version, which will greatly increase our rendering speeds 2 to 3 times from our benchmark tests and lower the hardware requirements significantly to run AirManager. We also hope to introduce our GPS nav database. Right now, that's holding a lot of our innovative developers and users from being able to build quality navigation instruments, and we certainly have that as a priority on our to-do list. I'm also excited that we're going to be offering in the future hardware support. We've designed the API. It's actually on our wiki already, and it's just a matter of coding that up, but we're going to be able to operate encoders and other hardware functions directly through AirManager with the same kind of scripting that we do with our current LCD computer-based instruments. It's going to add the ability to basically run your entire home simulator, home-built cockpit, using only AirManager and no other plugins or additional software like FSUIPC or Lynda. We also have a Raspberry Pi version of AirManager that's very far along in development. In fact, if you stop by our booth, you can see some hardware that's running that software. And that will become a real possibility for home builders who want to build standalone instruments that are networked directly and won't be attached to another computer. We also hope to offer by the end of the year the SimBox, which is a Raspberry Pi computer in a very small form factor, a small box that will have HDMI output for full HD video, USB, and it will be able to load instruments from the desktop version of AirManager. This will be great for people who want to run a touchscreen monitor for their simulator and don't want to have to purchase another computer. So if you really want to have an experience with realistic 2D panels that are fully interactive with your sim, the opportunity for touch control of those panels, flexible switching from aircraft automatically as you change aircraft in your simulator, easy networking, cross-platform and sim capability, and is economically priced at €28 or about $32, then we hope that you'll look at AirManager. We really want you. We know that our user community is key to advancing toward our vision of a single solution to manage all aspects of the sim cockpit. One plug-in for everything. We need people like you to make cool things with our products so that we can show them to other people. And we would really appreciate it if you'd give us a try. Personally, I hope you will help usher in my fantasy of a perfect world where there are no longer any mice in the sim cockpits of the world. So come visit us at our booth or visit us on our website at siminnovations.com. Thank you.